Welcome back, another episode. Don't forget to subscribe. The opening scene of Manhunt Episode 3, Let the Sheep Free, is reminiscent of a dream scenario. However, Anthony Boyle's character, John Wilkes Booth, is dreaming this time. He's being sworn in as the second leader of the Confederate States of America, not of the past but of the possible future. Will Harrison's character David Herold wakes him up by reading aloud from Booth's diary. Booth had instructed him to follow through, stating that publishers in Richmond will shortly place his writing in classrooms and libraries. Herold is then instructed by Booth to kill Oswell Swan, but as Union soldiers passed by, everyone had to hide. After leading Herold and Booth to Rich Hill, Swan demands that Booth give up his $5, but Booth declines. Samuel Cox waves a shotgun in Herold's face as they greet him. Herold informs Matt Walsh that they have been dispatched by Dr. Samuel Mudd. Cox recognizes Booth and extends an invitation to each of them to come inside, with the exception of Swan, who remains outside to await payment. Confederate Secret Service agent Cox maintains that the Southern dream has endured since Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Booth argues there's no point going to Richmond, but Cox disagrees. Confederate Commander Jefferson Davis is fugitive after the city was completely destroyed. Instead, he ought to travel to Montreal, Florida, or Mexico. However, Booth won't leave until he finds Davis, confronts him, and turns into a symbol of the Confederacy in Richmond. Swan guides Booth and Herold to the location where River Ghost, the man who would assist them on their difficult voyage to Richmond, is waiting for them. Reluctantly, they give Swan the additional $3 that she requests. After bringing them to the designated area, Swan calls Herold Booth's lackey once more and asks for $3 more from them before departing. Herold and Booth froze in the wilderness through the entire night. The River Ghost states that there are currently too many soldiers there to move when he eventually does. Booth puts an end to one of their horses since it is becoming too noisy. Herold declines when he offers him a gun to kill the other. While Vice President Andrew Johnson acknowledges that he disregarded Abraham Lincoln's presentation of Edwin Stanton's Reconstruction Plan because it was too lengthy to read. According to Stanton, the Confederate States must be reincorporated into the United States, free people must be assimilated into society, and Confederate leaders must be held accountable. Stanton, who has been experiencing asthma attacks throughout the duration of the encounter, insists that Leach be taken into custody and charged with the racist attack. On the other hand, Johnson pardons Leach and intends to grant amnesty to all Confederate classes. Stanton confronts Johnson, accusing him of lying to his face and letting lawlessness spread over the nation. In a flashback, Lincoln informs Stanton and abolitionist Frederick Douglass of his desire to guarantee slaves permanent freedom. He wants Stanton to employ the military to defend the abolitionists, and he wants Douglass to organize the Underground Railroad. They can push a large number of black men, women, and children from the South to the North to defend their freedom if they band together. The man that we met as Sanford Conover earlier is now going by the name of Wallace, posing as a Confederate. In Montreal, he encounters Confederate financier Anthony Marble, aka George Sanders. Sanders, having been cut off by Lincoln, is waiting to see which party wins Johnson's presidency in Canada. Wallace learns that Joshua Mickle's impersonation of a priest is being held captive in a monastery. Since Surratt is the sole lead as to where Booth might be hiding, Stanton travels to Canada to extradite him after learning that he is in Montreal. When she learns that Stanton is willing to die in order to pursue Booth, his wife Ellen becomes enraged. Surratt had a ticket on a ship leaving Montreal, as Wallace is aware. After the ship was sunk, Surratt boarded a neighboring Confederate vessel. Stanton finds it intriguing that John Wilkes Booth's name was on the manifest, and that a found trunk containing all of his garments bore his name. Stanton figures out that they intended to pretend Booth had died. They also find out that Sanders was involved in the assassination because he chartered the ship. After relocating to the U.S., Sanders buys a newspaper and promptly publishes a front-page cartoon featuring Stanton and Booth at work. Sanders wants to control the narrative and turn the people against Stanton. Lafayette Baker informs Stanton. Stanton must devise a superior one if he hopes to defeat Sanders. Sanders claims in a meeting with his fellow Confederates that Johnson has pardoned the majority of the population and that he will pay for those who are not allowed to travel to Europe. He proclaims that they may resume the slave trade for Wall Street's benefit now that Lincoln is no longer in office, and that Booth has given them another opportunity. For more videos, subscribe.